And who would this be directed to? Would you like to come up?
If I could ask Mr. Walsh.
Okay, Mr. Walsh, if you would mind.
Matt, thank you for being here.
You're recognized.
Just a quick question for you. We've heard in the news last week and even today that it's pro-life to vote against this bill. We've heard that suicides are prevalent, and suicide has impacted my family, so I'm sensitive when I hear something like that. I've read some of the stuff that you've done, and I was wondering, can you speak to the statistics of mental health and suicidal tendencies for the people who have gone through transition and for people who have not? In your studies, from what I've read, can you speak to that?
Mr. Walsh, you're recognized.
Sure. Well, the claim that doing the chemical castration drugs or surgery or hormonal intervention, the claim that this prevents suicide or has positive psychological effects down the line is utterly, totally baseless. There are no credible long-term studies that bear that out. And one of the reasons for that is that there couldn't possibly be any credible long-term studies because we've never done this to kids on this scale ever before in history. So this current, shall we say, crop of children, they are the guinea pigs. This is all experimental. We're sort of trying it out on them to see if it works. Now, they have attempted a few times to do studies, and the interesting thing is that the World Professional Association of Transgender Health, WPATH, which is a radical far-left pro-trans organization, they commissioned a study to try to prove that that hormones and puberty blockers decrease suicide rates among trans-identified youth. And even in their own study, they found that they couldn't prove it. They couldn't make that link because it's just not possible to do. The other thing I would mention too is that the number of trans-identified youth has skyrocketed in recent years. We're talking about exponential 10x, 20x growth. Just huge numbers have increased. And what we hear from the pro-trans side is that, well, this is not a social contagion. It's just that, there's always been this many trans people. It's just that they were not in an affirming environment before in history, and so they couldn't come out. And now, for the first time, trans people have the ability to live their truth, so to speak. Well, if that's the case, and there have always been these sort of like millions of trans people, and if it's also true that if we don't affirm them, that it would cause them to commit suicide, then we should be able to look back in history and find just this unbroken, incredible epidemic of children mysteriously killing themselves because they weren't being affirmed as trans. And what you find is that that didn't exist. I mean,
so we're going to be opening up with this because over the last couple of streams, it just occurred to me that somewhere along the line, the conservative influencers or Republicans as a whole have lost the plot. We need to look back and see what it was like in the Biden years. The insanity was just astounding. And here's Matt Walsh essentially attending a hearing on gender affirming care. Now, we know that Trump has essentially been neutering that movement, and people forget how effective he's been in pushing back this insanity. Now, let's keep listening and let me know your thoughts in the chat while we go through this, because it's always good to look back and see what we came out of.
The youth suicide rate has increased exponentially alongside trans affirmation. So trans affirmation causes the suicide rate, not the other way around. Last thing I'll note is that the suicide rate among trans-identified people is sky high. It remains sky high. All the data shows this. It remains sky high even after surgery. And in fact, in the most reliable data that we have, it's years after surgery when suicidality is the highest for trans-identified people. That's the reality.
Chairman Tyson, you good? Okay. Any further questions for Mr. Walsh while we're out of session? Mr. Hammer, Representative Hammer.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. I found it interesting. One of our people testified today that they had their gender affirming surgery at 16. And I know you in former comments mentioned this on your blog. At about 16, you're an adult who's mature and can make decisions. You're that at 16. I don't care what anybody says, even going so far as to say, 16 people, when you're 16, you should be married and could be pregnant or should be pregnant. So I'm curious if 16 is an adult in your view. Why does this bill have the minor defined as 18?
Mr. Walsh, you're recognized.
Yeah, that's a hit piece you took from Media Matters, from something when I was a radio host 13, 14 years ago in my early 20s. It's also not an accurate reflection of what I actually said. I was talking about the fact that people tended to marry young historically, and that's all that was about.
Yeah.
How does that relate to this subject?
Just curious of your definition of if you feel like people are adults at 16 should.
No, people are adults at 18, but actually your brain is not fully developed until you're 25. So we should be having a conversation about whether we should even be doing these surgeries to people at 18.
Yeah.
But certainly before 18, it's absurd. I mean, do you think that a 16-year-old can meaningfully consent to having their body parts removed? Do you? No?
We do not. Yeah, we ask the questions. It's not. It's.
Hang on.
Representative Hemmer, you're recognized.
Hang on. And this is what they always do, okay? This is what they always do. This thing where they want you to come and talk, and when it's time for them to answer and commit to a position, they sidestep it because it's not politically safe for them to actually take a position. All of these guys know that what they're talking about or what they're actually pushing is insane. They're all uncomfortable about it. But because it's politically expedient, they have to go along with it. Else they lose they lose votes. The media attacks them, and then they essentially their careers are over. The money dries up. That's how the game is played. All of these people don't believe that this actually should be a thing. They don't. Okay.
No more questions. Okay. Representative Clemens, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you give us a summary of your educational background or your healthcare education?
Oh, this is
experience?
insane.
Mr. Walsh, you're recognized.
My experience in healthcare?
Your educational background. I'm just curious. You've testified as to a lot of your own research. So I'm curious for what purpose you do that and what background you have to qualify you to speak to that.
Well, my background that qualifies me to speak to this is that I'm a human being with a brain, sense, and I have a soul.
Yep.
And so therefore, I think it's a really bad idea to chemically castrate children. That is my experience. Also, I didn't go to college, but I did go to school long enough to learn how to read.
Yep.
So I can read the data for myself, and that's exactly what I've done.
Representative Clemens, you're recognized.
And for what purpose do you conduct your research and use this brain of yours?
Mr. Walsh, you're recognized.
I use it for the purpose of trying to protect children from being castrated and mutilated. That's one of the things I try to do.
You don't use it to,
Clemens.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. You don't use it to get clicks on your
Let's state that.
publication?
Well, are you using it right now to try to get clicks with this interaction? No, I really like the
Mr.
idea
Walsh.
of getting of drawing attention to the fact that this is happening to children. I know you seem to find it very amusing. I don't.
Representative Clemens.
Well, you made a lot of misrepresentations and characterizations in your comments. So I think it's fair for me to question your background.
What did I mischaracterize?
Let me finish, please.
You're recognized, Representative Clemens.
You know, if you're going to come before a committee and make mischaracterizations and misrepresentations,
Okay.
it's fair game for us to ask you your educational background and your foundational knowledge for making such characterizations. That's my point. So I'm curious about you speaking to the
What
development of the
mischaracterizations did he
human brain
make?
by the age of 25. I seem to recall you advocating on behalf of firearm possession at the age of 18. Do you think that's appropriate?
Let's stay on the bill, please.
That's all I got.
Okay.
Yeah, well, can I respond to that?
Representative Mitchell, you're recognized.
I can't respond to what.
Representative Mitchell is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, you know, I think your original article, blog post, or tweet or whatever kind of started this firestorm. So I'm trying to figure out, where we need to look for these surgeries, because I'm still trying to find, the surgeries, because, the sponsor of the bill last week, I kind of agreed with him. I said, we need to split this bill into two parts. I may agree with him on the surgery part, because I don't think it's happening. So, you seem to have started this, so I need your evidence of where these surgeries are occurring in Tennessee. Could you give me, places, times, maybe some names, or something that, you know of?
Mr. Walsh, you're recognized.
My evidence is the healthcare provider's own words. I outlined Vanderbilt Health and their transgender care program, and the people that work for that program, their own words, talking about what they do, and talking about, for example, providing the chemical castration drugs to adolescent children. As far as surgeries, double mastectomies do happen, and the way that I know that they happen is that after I called attention to this program at Vanderbilt, they said that they were going to stop performing, they were going to put a pause on the program that performs these surgeries on minors. And so if you're pausing the program that performs surgeries on minors, then I'm going to assume
what's happening,
that the program existed. Otherwise, you couldn't have paused it. So now, the exact number of kids who are being subjected to this, I don't know exactly. It's really hard to come up with those numbers, I think, because the people doing it aren't really proud of it, and there's not a lot of interest on their end to tell us. But I do think that, even one child being horrifically mutilated is too many. So I know that it's more than one, and that's reason enough to put a stop to this, I would say.
Representative Mitchell, you're recognized.
Yeah. So last week I had an amendment that, we're looking to protect children from abuse. And I also had an amendment to stop cosmetic surgery of rhinoplasty and breast enhancements to minors. How would you feel about that?
Why is it so important for these people to roll over these things that adults can easily get access to over on minors? This obsession about children and minors. Of course, we all know that essentially is the sexualization of children and minors, because most of them are deviants and horrible people. But I don't know why this is even a conversation. Okay, like, guys, just let me know in the chat. Okay, when all of this was going on over the Biden years and even before that, how did you feel about it? And what do you think should be done about politicians who push these insane ideas? Okay, let me know in the chat.
Is that mutilation of children as well under the age of 18? They can't think for themselves?
Representative Mitchell, that's not on the bill that we have.
Yeah, it is. It's surgical. It's surgical.
I'm happy to answer that.
You're free to answer, Mr. Walsh.
Okay. My personal feeling about banning breast enhancements for minors? Yes, I would be all for, personally, I'd be all for banning that. Absolutely. Yeah.
Representative Mitchell.
Okay. And so I think the previous representative, proved that you have no medical background, correct?
No.
So you're here probably just as a public policy. You're trying to address good public policy, correct?
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
So I just have to question, some of your public policy, expertise when, I'm reading here, Singapore is able to have nice things in part because they execute drug dealers by hanging and arrest even petty vandals and thieves and beat them with a cane until they bleed. We don't have nice things here because we aren't willing to do what is required to maintain them. So
Yes. Look, whenever people see consequences being dished out to evil people, other people who see it, who are planning on doing that, say to themselves, okay, I don't want that to happen to me. And they change their minds. Okay? When there were public executions, I think there was a piece of data that said data from the late 1800s that murders and violent crime would drop weeks after a public execution or a public hanging of a murderer. Like, it's human nature. When people see consequences, they stop doing the insane things that they usually would do. Okay? And most of the time, like, parents know this very well, especially the good ones who spank their kids. Okay? I am all for spanking. Okay? When spanking is done with love and affection and care, not beating or abusing children. Okay? When you spank a child, they know that there are consequences. It's the parents teaching the child about consequences. Okay, so these kinds of conversations are just weird to me.
So, with statements like that, I kind of have to question your public policy beliefs. And, and you also stated there'd been no studies. Well, I'm sitting here holding a study from the American Academy of Pediatrics.
Please.
From the University of Pittsburgh.
The same group that came out, I think, was it shortly after Trump? Now, maybe not this specific group, but there was the American Society of Pediatrics or something that stepped out to essentially say that all of that was hogwash. So, I mean, these studies, and I learned years ago that some of these studies are paid for. Okay, these drug companies and medical lobbyists pay for these studies to come out in order to further their aims. The problem with this practice is this. Okay, for one, it's immoral. Okay, it's immoral to say that your body, which was given to you by God, was a mistake and that God made a mistake. It's immoral. Okay, because that is a moral decision. Two, it creates complications that make you a lifelong dependent on drugs provided by these pharmaceutical companies. Look, always follow the money. It's always about the money. They push these bills because they need more people to be on these drugs, and the more people who take these elective drugs, these elective surgeries, the younger they are, the longer they depend on these drugs, and the more money the companies make. All right, just follow the money. About
the suicidal disparities between transgender and cisgender adults and children. So I think, before you state things, you may need to know all the facts.
All right, so that was a crazy conversation from 3 years ago. Okay, this was over 3 years ago. A lot of the conversations that we're having today about Alex Jones, Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson attacking Trump and saying that he's the Antichrist. I think they've forgotten that they literally had someone in office who could essentially fit that bill. Okay, with Obama and with Joe Biden. They easily fit that bill. These were people who attacked Christians. They attacked Christian values and culture. They pitted themselves again and again against the values that built up America. And they were never called the Antichrist. Never. Tucker Carlson, with all of the things he had to say about the Democrat Party, with all the monologues he ran on Fox News, he never called any of them the Antichrist. So why is Trump so different? Why is he so different? So these are the things that were happening back then. And it just chafes at my conscience that I think we're forgetting how bad it was. We honestly are. So I think I'm going to be touching on some of these things again and again, just to remind us of what it was like and what it will be like multiplied by 10, 20, 100 times, because they are going to come back into office at this rate and they're going to speed run all of these insane policies that we voted. Okay, I didn't vote. Okay, I didn't vote. But that Republicans voted Trump in to get out of the American system. That is something that we need to remember. Well, thank you for watching. This is a mini live stream, and we just wanted to take a look at this and watch this along with you. I hadn't seen this this video before, and I just wanted to share it with you this evening.